So, joining me for the part two of For Colors Only is Dee Browne, who is an MSW candidate at Fordham University and a old cherished friend of mine from back in the days before we had cell phones, really, that could do as much as they could do. I'm gonna just say that without going too far
Okay,
into it.
okay. Well, way not to mention the gray hairs, but it's all right.
Oh,
I like that. I like that.
we look good, okay? 30s look great on us, honey. I don't
Listen,
even miss
listen.
my 20s at all.
Uh, okay.
So I for this specific interview with you, I've divided the questions into special categories. So there's a category of called views, and then social, and then response. So we're gonna start with views first. And the first question for that is I personally have gone on record pointing out that there's much racism and fetishism within the gay community. Do you agree with this finding? Is part one of the question.
Absolutely. Well, it's really funny because there's fetishes for different reasons for different groups of people. So you're
Mm,
absolutely correct in that. So it's not just in like the gay community, but it's also in the trans community. So there is a huge entire like fetishization on different levels. Like there's obviously race, where
mhm,
there's a lot of focus on like different ethnicities, especially from the point of view of the white gays. So you have I mean, the white gays. Ha, funny, but like specifically from like a white cis male gay viewpoint, there's like these categories that they put us all in that personal experience I've experienced, like this fascination. It kind of like went past like intrigue and went straight into fascination, and like there was no like connection there other than the fact that like you're black or you're whatever, and you are like you're here with me, and like I get to say that I was with a black person, I was with this person, I was with that person, right? Then you have your gender expression paradigm, of course. So you have the mask from mask. The more masculine you are, the more clout you get. But at that same token, when you're applying it to trans folks, it is very, very lucrative if you are hyper feminine. Like if you are hyper feminine, like you get so many messages, and people just kind of like gravitate towards you. And especially like, so basically the more like woman like you look, the more you get. And it's this whole concept of passability that is thrust upon on trans folks, that like in order to survive in this society you must pass, and in that comes the whole like oh, I can get somebody who's not a girl but a girl, and it's like kind of also diminishes the gender, like it's the gender identity that we have. And it's like if I'm a woman, then I'm a woman straight up, like no ifs ands or buts. But if I'm being reduced to the dirty little secret that looks passable and doesn't is undetectable, then it's all good. So yeah, there's definitely different levels of fetishism in the community.
all right, so there's a part two and a part three to this question. So
Oh dear.
if it's a little too deep for you, just let me know.
Oh,
So
I
I
love
want
it.
okay. So
Mhm.
what is your view on interracial dating, considering the degrees of racism and fetishism in the LGBT community?
Okay. So I have mixed feelings about it, right? So let me preface this by saying that if you love who you love, it's beautiful, right? I don't want to like say that like love amongst different racial groups, different ethnic groups don't exist, because obviously they do, or else like a lot of us wouldn't be here. So like let's kind of get that out the way. But if we really want to like get into it, it's the motive, or like the whole entire um I want to say the reasoning behind it, right? So if you're going to go for let's take black men, right? Cis black men. Let's take cis black straight men for example, because easy target. But so they so let's say like there's a straight black man, cis black man that is going and dating white women, right? Now, it'll be one thing if like, he actually liked the girl. It's another thing if like, the girl has a connection with him. But it's a whole nother when you specifically seek out white women in spite of black women, if you understand what I'm saying. So there's like also a reason behind it. You can also see this in the queer community, that there's a lot of black gay men that specifically go after white men or specifically go after non-black men particularly. And a lot of that is fueled from self-hatred. A lot of that is fueled from, a disconnect with their culture because if you get in the conversation with some of these folks, you get to hear like the actual disconnect that they have from their community. And it's fascinating to see how that manifests in how they kind of like go about getting into relationships or situationships. So I think that um, is definitely like a mixed bag for me. But I would want to, celebrate every relationship, but for the right reasons. I'll say that.
Hey, perfect. How do you? Oh no, we're not even going to go to that one. So the last question on the views category is why do you think that down low, which for people that are listening or watching and don't know what that means, that's a Black colloquialism for closeted gay men. Why do you
Mhm.
think that they are so prominent in the Black community specifically?
Okay, so we're talking about trade. Okay.
Okay, the tray, the
Talking about
tray.
trade. So the illustrious elusive trade. So here's the thing about the black community. The black community is the most loving, open, and accepting community, except for when it comes to their own. So that's why I kind of want to like read that in.
Oh,
Except for when it comes to their own, they're not. But everybody else, they're open, they're warm, they're such a giving people. And it would be nice if you would show that to your own. But if you really want to think about it, black and marginalized folks tend to they don't tend to be more homophobic than anybody else. I want to be very careful with that. That like no one group is more homophobic, transphobic than the next. That's just not. I'm sorry, it's just not a fact. However, the way that it manifests in black and brown communities is that there's this very, very, very narrow way or narrow like path that you take when you are growing up and you want to express yourself. So, like, there's a very narrow set of expectations for you if you're a woman, a very narrow expectation if you are a man. And for any type of identity or expression outside of that, it is not feasible because it's more of a survival thing for us. It's like to keep us from getting ourselves even more danger than we are because the color of our skin already kind of denotes that you have a target on your back. So with that, they don't want the added stress and the added, stigma of you being anything other than what they would be able to portray as a strong man or a strong woman. You understand what I'm saying?
hmm
So when it comes to DL men, they want to keep that up. They grew up with that. That's something that they've internalized, something that they've seen firsthand be shunned and be ridiculed, right? Um, that's an experience that they don't want to have for themselves, for the most part, or something that they don't want to be reminded that they feel and that they experience. So you have folks that go behind in the dark of night and find themselves somebody on one of the plethora of wonderful apps that we have, and they go and try to try to like scratch that itch, so to speak, without anybody necessarily knowing. So it's harmful because it's harmful to that person, number one. So let's kind of like think that this is like talked about enough. So like let's kind of bring in a an air of compassion for DL folks and people who are in the closet, because honestly, they do need compassion from all of us. It's like they feel that cannot live and cannot exist in the way that they want to. Express they cannot express love or express themselves the way that they want to. They can't see who they want to because of whatever career, family, community expectation, whatever it is, you are not allowed for that. And you can see a lot of that, especially down south and especially in the Caribbean. You see a lot of that going on. So it's not fair to that person because like you're harming that person. You're causing so much pain and suffering in that person that then translates to the behaviors that they exhibit, which then in turn hurts people, women, a lot of Black women mostly, and both cis and trans women. Let's do that. And
I got a question on that
also,
too, so
yeah,
trust me.
right. So and also gay and bisexual men. So it's like you have this kind of three-week circus of trauma going on, and it's not productive. And I think that if we were to at least kind of like educate ourselves on the variance of sexual orientation, the variance of gender expression, and to get out of this notion that like you have to be one way, I think that this will open a multitude of doors, and it will make this people's experience a lot easier, and you won't have the DL kind of like thing, which I don't even like use anymore. But yeah,
right. That's I'm revealing my age by saying that.
right.
So that's what I will say, that you saying that we should bring an air of compassion, or show them compassion.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is just like, you blew my mind with that, because that's just something I have never considered, I've never thought about or anything, and I think that says a lot about the gay community as a whole, because I kind of feel like this is the common view of it, where it's just kind of like, for me, I say, I came out when I was 15. I was the first boy cheerleader in my high school. I was twirling batons. I was the drum major. I've struggled my way out of the closet. And if you can't struggle your way out, then I don't want to have anything to do with you.
Right.
So you saying that makes me step back again and say, well, hey, my family, my social circumstances are not everybody else's. Somebody
Exactly.
definitely has it harder than you do. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate you saying that.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, of course. But no, like definitely, I do definitely appreciate that, because like, especially a lot of us out, like who are out, we tend to forget that like, there was a time where we were feeling the same way too.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, like, those of us who came from more progressive households, or were able to, change or to progress like the family, the hearts and minds of their family and friends and circles, on the journey with them. It's not really that way for a lot of other people, especially if you're taking religion into consideration and you're taking culture into consideration. Folks still get killed for coming out. That's still a thing. So we all have to kind of just like keep in mind, like, like not everywhere, not everybody has the same amount of privilege that some of us have.
Ooh, preach. So now I'm going to kind of switch and play devil's advocate, I guess, sort of against the DL thing. So the question I have for the response category is, there has been documented violence and murders, as we all know, against members of the Black trans community, more than should ever be acceptable. One shouldn't be acceptable. Mm-hmm. But how do you feel that the response has been? And do you plan to take on any advocacy for? Oh, I know you do already, so that really doesn't apply to you. But basically, how do you feel the response has been on behalf of the Black community, and how do you think we could go about doing more?
Okay, so the Black community as a whole. Let's kind of get into something that I touched upon a little bit earlier, which is the narrowness of like expression and what it means to be Black. It's a very narrow definition of what it means to be Black in wherever you are, whether it's in America, whether it's in Jamaica, whether it's in Trinidad or anywhere. Um, there's a very narrow, narrow like way that you can express yourself or what is expected of you is very narrow. And when you get into something, get into transgender individuals, they are the literal like exact. They are like they break that. They are they we I should say we. I'm over here that way like I'm not part of the category. We break that. We shatter that. That whole thing does not apply to us because we take it, flip it on its head, right?
Hmm.
Simply put, um, we tend to then get so we get a lot of angst and anger because it's honestly breaking it down, like going into like like sociology again. It's like the idea of what a Black man is to have this certain set of traits, right? And someone being trans completely obliterates that and reverses it. And for us as marginalized people, getting back to the fact that we're marginalized people to begin with, especially in this
Hmm.
country, we're very marginalized. We don't, we as a collective, want the best for our people. As convoluted as that sounds, we want the best for our people. So a lot of that comes from a place of we don't want you to get hurt, so we want you to stop it. Like you don't have to do this. So when you have Black trans women, Black trans individuals, Black non-binary people, they go against everything that the narrow binary stands for. So what do? You try to correct it. You try to stop it. You try to everything you can in your power to make it go away. And it's acceptable, honestly, because of the way that, especially because of the way that transgender people as a whole in society in general are portrayed. We're the
Hmm.
deceptors. We're the we're the cross dressers. We're the predators. We're the the girls who come out at night, and it's like it's very negative how we are
Hmm.
portrayed, especially in the media. Like, look at 90s movies. Like, hell, look at the first Ace Ventura movie, which is like my favorite example. Like the whole entire gag of the movie is that there was a trans woman that like was like scamming her way into buying a football team.
Right.
And the whole entire and as soon as like she was exposed and how she was able to like sexually manipulate everyone and how repulsed everybody became at the end of the movie, albeit like a cisgender woman played it with a prosthetic. Let's kind of throw that in there too, and like that says something about representation. But anyway,
Okay.
it's like it says something about society and how they view trans individuals. Like you didn't really have trans individuals be really visible up until like the last decade, to be quite honest. It's still very new for a lot of people, and it takes a lot of learning. It's a learning curve to try to like understand what it is, because many people still don't understand the concept of what transgender is. With that being said, there in no way, shape, or form should be a ransom on my neck because you felt insecure about people finding out that you were feeling me, that you wanted me, because when you was over here like kissing, blowing kisses and like, hitting me up at the gas station,
Come on with it.
there was no problem. So
Come on
now
with
it's
it.
so I'm like, now that like, you find out like, oh, that there's a lot more going on, you don't want people to find out. You already knew. You knew what it gave, and you still are going to go ahead and harm me to protect yourself and your image. That is wrong. That is disgusting and despicable. And for you to and for you to be legally protected, which is even worse because like there's a lot of states in this country that still will protect you if you kill a trans woman, if you say that you were so shocked and that you were so distraught after finding out that the person was trans that you ended up killing them, you can get off, and
That's
that's
it.
real, and that's real. And protection, but you also have the legal protection. So we have to like definitely talk to our legislators, like become lobbyists ourselves to try to get some of these policies pushed. It's going to be a little hard now because the Supreme Court just flipped over, unfortunately.
Again.
Again, unfortunately, but it's in our best interest to try to like at least do it within our state if our state didn't overthrow the statute.
Now, I don't condone this at all, and I don't want to this next question
Okay.
or justify that at all. But it's since we're talking about Black issues and all that stuff, and I want to also turn that question to so you and I both know because we didn't had our times in this community
Yes.
that there's a lot of these gay and trans men, women. I'm not trying to. I'm just saying in the gay community. That where we mess with the trade, we flirt with the trade, whatever. So then when whatever the motivation is, not getting your way, whatever, to blackmail them or out them and all that stuff that then triggers a violent response. Should we condemn or address or say that they're wrong? Is it wrong for them to blackmail them and out them? I just feel like that's another like a uncomfortable issue that we don't ever really address. Like I feel like sometimes it'll be like, well, they shouldn't have outed so and so, so that's their fault. I don't think that anyone. I don't think that it's their fault that they got hurt or killed. But I also don't feel like I feel like maybe you shouldn't have outed them because I also feel like that's not your journey to share with the world. You were a person in their journey, but
Right. But yes, and I completely agree with that. That like, first of all, no one should be outing anyone. That's not that's not right. That is not cool on any type of level. Like, if you out somebody, you are like a terrible person, period. But at the same time, like we also have to figure out that why it's even used as like a chess piece. Like, why is this even into play? Like, why is this even like why is this even like tangible for you? Like where you can like immediately you don't get whatever money it is, like, oh, okay, so this is going to be now sent on this website, boom, which we have seen happen multiple times with multiple celebrities. So it's like, it's something that is almost like, a running joke at this point. But so it's like, what is it and how can we like, build relationships better? And I think it's because of the way that we see each other. Like, as many people outside of the community may not know that number one, there is like this rift between DL and out people. Like there's this like uncomfortable rift on how they view each other. Not even getting into the massive amount of internalized homophobia that comes into play, but there's that. Then there's also like this like the people who are marginalized, like what they do to survive, like especially when you're talking about trans women, most often is sex work. So in order to like get whatever they need paid for, which is their rent, which is their medication, which is surgeries, which is like any type of like anything that they need because they cannot get traditional work. Sex work is the option. So, if you need that money, you're gonna get it any way that you got, but you can. So if you don't pay up, okay, that's fine. So you either give me my money or this goes on Instagram right now. and it's like, it's a playing card and it's terrible, but it's the situation, you know. You have to, so there's a lot of layers and there are so many moving pieces in this discussion, um, that we really need to kind of like, talk about, like, let's kind of like make this, once again, me and my tree hugging self, make this a better society so people won't have to do that, you know?
Mhm. Oh, you are educating the hell out of me today. Let me just say that. Even me with my old self. So moving to the social category, stemming off of what we've been talking about. Have you ever been verbally or physically attacked? And if you don't mind sharing one of the specific experiences.
Oh yes, absolutely, and I think you may know about this one. One of the situations that I actually used to hate talking about.
Mm,
So in 2017, so like 3 years ago at this point, I was attacked. I was a victim of a hate crime. My jaw was broken, and
mhm.
my jaw was wired for about 6 weeks. So that, even though the situation itself was caused by someone else who shall remain nameless, and it was that person's altercation. I got into it because my friend, or whom I considered my friend at the time, went into the fray to, I guess, avenge his friend or whatever. And like the friend that I was, I followed. And I went against my better judgment and I followed so I can make sure that this person does not get seriously hurt. And I ended up getting seriously hurt. And I think it was mostly because of the way that I was looking. Hair long, clothes tight, bag over, like, I was looking like,
Looking phenomenal.
yeah,
Okay.
I was looking phenomenal. Like, like giving very much so, stepping out on the town in the bar in Manhattan, like, period. But because of the fact of because of how I looked, and
Mhm.
I guess because I was perceived to be an easy target, they attacked me instead of my friend, and it was I'm very shocked that it did not go further than it did, but it was an eye opener. It really kind of like opened my eyes to, like, these things really do happen. Like, I only heard stories and saw things on, like, media takeout or whatever website that I was looking at the time. Like, it wasn't real for me until that moment. And after that, it's like, for me, I was it's laying in the hospital bed, like, wow, this actually happens. Like, and it happened to me. So, like, it's not something that is not like one of those one-off things. It's not something that is so obscure that it will never happen. And yes, it actually does happen. It happens a lot. And I'm so glad that this year is bringing to light so many that
Mhm.
happen every single day, because this happens every single day. Like, trans women get attacked, even if it is an argument, even if they are in the wrong, like, even if they are in the wrong. Let's say that they were wrong, they were dead wrong. The response was not warranted. Like, let's take
Mhm.
Ayana Dior, for example. Like, that girl got into an argument with somebody else at somebody else for somebody else's car. Like, not even having to do with any of the men who chased
Mhm.
her down and beat her. Like, why does it take 20 men to go after that? She would have been 100 pounds soaking wet. 100 pounds soaking wet, and you gonna run after her and beat her.
And and the sad thing is that to be these cis hetero men that they're supposed to be, it takes
Hmm.
numbers of you to prove a point. You know, me and
Ex-
you are from the old school. It's one on
mhm.
one, and we make sure we keep anybody out, no jumping. That would be one thing we always used to say: ain't no jumping, ain't no jumping. And that
Right,
was
and if
kind of
you
like
jump in, then if you jumping in, then everybody's jumping
exactly,
in.
and that was
Okay.
kind of like the standard to go jump somebody, which is I couldn't think of anything more cowardly. You know.
Absolutely, and it's very similar to what happened to me because it was like a group of like
Mhm.
15 people. 15, and I'm like, it took 15 people to corner 2. And it's like, in like in any other situation, it would have been on. But I'm like, there's 15 of you. There is literally 2 of us, and because I know this one ain't really going like I don't know if this one's going to really fight or not. It's really just one. So
Mhm.
it's like
Right.
I the odds are not in your favor, and there's nothing you can really do. And a
Mhm.
lot of people don't don't see that. Like when they see these videos, when they see this footage, it's like you don't understand how scary that is. And like the only thing you can do is run. Like you
Mhm.
can't do anything else. Like you have 20 people after you, you cannot fight them all. There's no physical way possible that you can handle 20 people. Like not even like Bruce Lee can handle 20 people. Okay.
No.
It's
No.
like at one point you're running. And it's like, unless like you can kick over like a shelf or something, then there's nothing that you can really do. You are literally by yourself. And the fact that no one wanted to help, that's
Mhm.
what gets me because even in my situation, like people like wanted to like say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Write stories on me, do news segments on me. Like I had channels 2, channel 7, channel 4, which is ABC, NBC, and CBS. For those who are not from New York or the New York area, that's NBC, CBS, and ABC. Wanting to interview me. I had channel 13 like interview me via text. It was a whole entire production for 2 weeks. And then after
Mm.
that, nothing. The
Mhm.
DA dropped the case. The the detectives dropped the case. Everybody forgot about it, and here I am. Like,
Which,
well, what happens?
well, first of all, thank you for sharing that, but also that speaks a lot on New York, the big blue Democrat New York, the
I
Democratic
have something to say
state.
to that. Go ahead. I have something to say about that.
It just speaks volumes to me because that's supposed to, Manhattan, New York, that's supposed to be one of our LGBT meccas, so or capitals. That Atlanta for the black gays and LGBT,
Mhm.
and Los Angeles is another one, and stuff like that. So that to me is disappointing, is shocking. It's, I won't say shocking because it's expected, but
Right.
it's still disappointing at the end of the day. But I know you wanted to say something about it being a blue.
Right. So it's funny that you bring up New York as a state because a lot of what folks don't know, and I had a couple of people, I posted something on Instagram, and a couple of people wanted to comment, and like, this is kind of also to clear that up, that like New York is a very red state. Like
Hmm.
outside of the New York City area and a few 4 pockets, Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, and Albany. Outside of those, it's very red. It's very red, very Republican. And you can take a drive up to Oneonta. You can drive a drive up to Binghamton, a drive up to Utica, Ithaca, Saratoga Springs, anywhere that is not one of those pockets. Trump and Pence, and lining the streets with American flags. Like that's all you see. And for a city to be holding the state like that, and it's a half and half, like half the population of the state is in the city, and then half are in what we call it upstate, and it just kind of goes to show you that like the state itself is really not that progressive, and then to even boil it down to the city, you also have to take into consideration how they treat different people in different areas. Like New York City, for those who don't live here, is very segregated, extremely segregated. Like you have ethnic enclaves and like groups of people that live in certain neighborhoods, and it's like hell if you're like if even if you wanted to live there, it's really not a good idea for you to live there. Like, I for one would never live in Howard Beach because Howard Beach is where like all the racist Italians live. Like I'm not gonna go there and live there. And it's like a lot of people are just like, I'm just not gonna do that. And where I got attacked, it was in a neighborhood called Beverside. So Beverside and Bed-Stuy, for those of us who know, very black, very historically black, also very conservative. Like, they very much so like into the church, very much so into like, building the community, very Hotep-esque, like, very Hotep-esque, like, which is a lot of the black areas in, especially in Brooklyn and Harlem, like especially black areas in New York City, very Hotepish. And this is the ideology. So for you to be queer, trans, and get hurt in one of those neighborhoods,
Hmm.
they're not going to be it's not going to they're not going to pay attention to you. So it's like it's great and it's progressive here if you're white. Just wanted to
That's
throw it out there.
you know what? Great point, because while we're doing this interview, it is in the middle of the election count off, and I got into it with some conservative person who I tried to keep some form of social life with, because I'm just to the point where I'm intolerable of any of it.
Right.
I used to be very tolerable, but I'm not anymore.
Hmm.
And they were. This is clearly what happens with people who are overnight political analysts and whatnot.
Yeah.
They talk about Pennsylvania and say, all that red and all those different counties, da, 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 how is he ahead if you only have these couple of blue ones? I said, well, first of all, this is the whole point of the Electoral College, because
Okay.
it's what keeps the Republican people in the little, the power that they do have. But I said, you
Hmm.
also have to realize that all those squares, no matter how big they are or small they are counties, and they are counties with maybe 5 people in them. When you go to those small blue ones, which actually has the fun stuff to do, the things to go to see, and all that stuff, those are maybe filled with 5,000 people.
Hmm.
So, that's why I kind of hate when they show that stuff on the screen, because one who doesn't know much about the Electoral College or population spread and stuff like
Right.
that,
Right.
they would think like, how are the different? They're still in the election. No, no one lives in. I'm trying to think of some random part of Pennsylvania that I can't even think of, because no one knows about it. But when you think of
Mhm.
Pittsburgh,
Right.
Philadelphia,
Mhm.
Allentown, or
Right.
those
Yeah.
are the progressive areas, because that's where people want to go. And I
Right.
also want I'm glad that you brought up the whole Hotep aspect, because
Mhm.
for people who don't know, like, you have the conservative alt right, like the Boogaloo Boys and the MAGA and all of that.
Yeah.
Hoteps are kind of the black version
Yeah.
of the conservative alt right,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why I rolled my eyes so hard when you said that, because it's just kind of
that
like, child, the Hoteps.
yeah, no, seriously, like the whole teppery is real in these parts. It's so real in this part. It's like, you see onks everywhere. And it's a mess because like, that's especially older black people, that's like their idea of Pan-Africanism. And
Mm.
it's not our idea of Pan-Africanism, definitely not mine, but it's not but that's how they feel that they can connect. That's the way that they can preserve their blackness, so to speak. So that's a lot. It's a lot of that going
It's just that particular group just amazes me with the amount
on.
of hypocrisy and stupidity that I see spewing from them all the time. Like,
Right.
remember that one meme that was going around where somebody said, if they go out to eat and the guy orders dessert, he kind of fruity or kind of gay. Like,
I can't. Like, what if you want cheesecake? Let the man eat
right? What's
cheesecake.
gay about cheesecake?
What if you want cheesecake? What
I'm
if you
sure it
want
ain't gay when you want banana pudding at Thanksgiving, your grandma, or
or
pound
peach
cake,
cobbler
or
or
right.
sweet potato pie? Like, come on now.
That's the dessert, so,
Exactly.
um, so the black, we've been through this. We're not going to belabor this issue at all. But do
Right.
you ever think that the black community will be accepting of the LGBT, the black LGBT?
They got a long way to go. Like I know the group that I work with. For those of you who are kind of like tuning in or whatever, so I worked with the Caribbean Equality Project. I am their both their community coordinator and the mental health specialist on the team. So one of the things that we organized was a trip to DC. I didn't go particularly because I had like a lot of stuff to do here, but my colleagues went. A lot of the volunteers that we have that work with us, they went. and the experience that they got and the treatment that they got in Washington as a queer and trans Black group was so, it was disheartening. Like it was like they were looked at as the, why are you here? Why are you talking about trans issues? Like what does Black gay people have to do with anything? Like this is not the point of this. Can you not right now? This is not pride. Like all these like terrible things that like, but we're here, we're also Black. We're here to be as much as part of this conversation as you. Lest we forget, Black Lives Matter was started by 3 queer women. Like, and
Period.
so, from what you're telling me, like, so what are you saying to me? Like, what are you trying to get across? A lot of Black people kind of feel that way, that like the two are separate issues and separate identities, and especially when you're talking about like advocacy and civics, it's like you have to choose one. Like either you're gonna be part of the Black group or you're gonna be part of the LGBT group. You can never be both. And that's not how intersectionality works. If you read intersectionality theory, it is the experience of being both at the same time. And it's like you can have many different identities that intersect and that create you and your unique experience. And that should be part of the course in a Black Lives Matter movement. Like, I would think
Mm-hmm.
that you would want so many different Black experiences that, like, it and the injustices that we face, you would want to make sure that everybody is good, you know? But the way that DC went this year, there's a long, long, long road ahead. I mean, I will remain hopeful. I will remain hopeful, but it's going to take a lot of work.
I was about to say, like, my narrative that I have, I won't even, it's my narrative because it's what I believe in.
Mhm.
When I think of things like the Black fraternities and sororities, that's my best example of it.
Right.
The Black community, I'm convinced at this point, is not at all concerned with Black equality overall because of how they operate. If you have a Black Kappa that's in a position of power, they're going to pick another Kappa for a position they're hiring
Mhm.
for and not somebody else who's more qualified. So I say that to say some of the people, not all, are more concerned with establishing a Black hierarchy within itself than
Right.
really trying to get us as a whole a group of people at the table with the other people. We're
Right.
too busy trying to, like, it's kind of like hurt people. Marginalized people are trying to marginalize themselves. And it's
Mhm.
sad because I see it the most amongst our people than anybody else. Because, like I always tell people, the white community, one thing they have right about them is they gonna stick together. They might not
Yep.
approve of you being gay, but if you get into some issue with a Black person, bring that white gay boy right on over here with us. They gonna take
Oh,
it.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
If you got a Black gay person that get into it with a white person, the Black people
Mhm.
gonna say, "Well, he gay. He shouldn't have been involved, and he shouldn't have did this." What
Yeah.
what's the
Yeah.
problem?
That that is exactly it. That's exactly it. And I'm like, it's counterproductive, honestly. If you
Hmm.
really want to get into it, it's so counterproductive. We, as a collective, have too much at stake for us to be dividing anything. We don't need to be splitting anybody. We don't need to be forcing anyone to choose one over the other. Like all of our collective experiences create the momentum for the Black Lives Matter movement. And that's what a lot of our heterosexual cisgender counterparts don't understand. Like, we are part of this conversation as well. We're a
Hmm.
huge part of this conversation, and it makes it it makes things a lot less fruitful that only one group of people are fighting for stuff. And it's like up in arms. God rest his soul. George Floyd is all up in arms when he dies, but Tony McDade died a few couple of weeks later, Tony McDade, for those of you who don't know, was a trans man who was shot and killed by police in Tallahassee, Florida. And nobody said anything about him. No one even really mentioned his name.
Mm-mm.
And if you didn't know about him, you would have never heard of this name before. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, you know, we all of our experiences are integral to this movement. So for you to pick and choose who you want to represent your struggle or represent your suffrage, like, come on now, like, we are all in this together.
Period.
And the period, and like the faster you realize that, the more we can do and the more ground we can cover. But until then, we're just gonna sit here looking at each other.
And like, so that's interesting. So, all right, now I'm going to ask you the final question, which is the thesis for the whole this thing called Four Colors Only. Because I brought it up on an episode with of this my show Assent, Dissent with my co-host, and he couldn't answer. So I decided to take it upon spreading it out across the different groups.
Okay.
How can anyone that is Black and in the LGBT community continue to support Black Lives Matter message when it is clear that in the Black community that some Black lives do not matter? How does one square that with themselves?
Right. How do you rationalize that? Well, here's how I've been rationalizing it, at least for me. At the end of the day, there are certain things about yourself that are immutable. Like, I can't change the color of my skin at all. Like, I'm sorry. Like, even if I go and decide that I'm going to bleach all this off my skin, I'm still going to be Black at the end of the day. Like, that's not going to change, right? I'm still going to be trans, period. You know, we're still going to be queer, period. Like, that can't change. I'm sorry. It's just not going to change, not in this lifetime. But so with that in mind, you already know how your people. It's like, we know how the Black Lives Matter majority of them, how they actually feel about us. Like, if we weren't there, they wouldn't blink enough. We know this. But at the end of the day, your life is still on the line. Like, people are still after you for the same reason that they would be after that. Like, because that just because you are gay, just because you're lesbian, you're bi, you're pan, you're queer, non-binary, trans, non-conforming, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they see a Black person, they have a problem. Like, you have a target on your back just for the fact of being Black. And regardless of how others view you, you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for them per se. You're doing it so you can be comfortable, so your family can be comfortable, for your children to be comfortable, so they can have a better world to grow up in and to be in. So I view it as, like, make it about who you are, who you're doing this for. Like, what are you in this fight for? Because if you're going to be in your fight, this fight for them, then you're going to be burnt out. You're going to be burnt out. You're going to drop out. Nothing's going to happen. But if you make it so where it makes sense to you, like, how are you going to use this for yourself? Like, who are you doing this for? Are you doing this for your particular community? Are you doing this for Black trans people? Are you doing this for Black queer people? Are you doing this for Black disabled people? Are you doing this Black people with mental health diagnoses? Like, who are you doing this for? And once you figure out who you're doing it for, then do it for them. Do it for them. Don't do it because, you know, someone died and now you feel the need to say something about it, because it's like, no, he shouldn't have died. Like, no, he should not have died. But if you're doing it just because someone died, that defeats the purpose of the ideology of the actual movement. Like, it just completely diminishes the mission statement. It goes against it. So do it for that.
Wow. Look, I truly when I came up with that question originally in the political show, I
Hmm.
didn't even have an answer to it, but it was just a burning question. And
Right.
I still don't have my own personal answer, but that was
Mhm.
phenomenal. So, is there any like contact information that you care to share or about the Caribbean equality and
Of
stuff? So,
course, of
huh?
course. So if you want me personally,
Hmm.
so I can be stalked at Instagram, 718 Vanities Envy. So that's 718 underscore Vanities Envy. Um, so if you want to follow me there, I post whatever I want. Why? Because it's my page. But like, if you really want to like get into like a lot of civic stuff, because I post a lot of civic minded things. So like, if you want to get into that, please, by all means. If
And
you
I
want
steal a
to,
lot of
uh,
stuff from them, so
yeah,
it's quality.
it's quality. It's quality. And if you want to be a part of the Caribbean Equality Project, please follow us at Caribbean Equality Project on both Facebook and on Instagram, Carib Equality on Twitter. You can email us at info@caribbeanequality.org or visit us at caribbeanequality.org. We have a multitude of programming for those who are in the New York City area. A lot of our services are now virtual, like our Unchained group, which is a support group that we have two times a month. Yeah, two times a month for those who wish to be a part of it. We encourage all Caribbean people who are part of the diaspora, no matter where you are, please come in. Even if you're not, come in. So yeah,